what they're doing is they're doing a HP setup where they're going to have sports medicine, physical therapy, and the multiple skill types at the wing level. So they'll be overseeing all the training squadrons from an HP standpoint. And what they'll be doing is starting with the instructors to try to get them functioning better because they've gone their entire careers without this setup, but also the students coming in to baseline a lot of their things, go through educational pieces from a lifestyle performance medicine aspect with your sports medicine physician, but also provide that immediate embedded musculoskeletal injury and concussion slash TBI slash, let's be honest, when you're pulling G's and rotational forces and hard landings and things like that, that has a cognitive effect. Being able to come in with early intervention for those specific things, because we know how much it costs to train each of those pilots.
I'm so excited because I just realized this. Team, welcome to another week of Mobs and Mo's here with Drew and Alex. For folks, I have a funny story. For folks that live in this area of sort of central North Carolina, you will have known that last week we got hit by Tropical Storm Chantal, I think was the name. Anyway, big storm. Longtime listeners of this show will know that I built a rowboat some time ago. Finished the rowboat, all was well, thing floats, great. I had it sitting upside down on an inflatable dock covered in a tarp by my lake, I guess. It's not my lake. A lot of people live on it, but anyway.
Is it gone?
Wait. Wait for it. I was in the mountains this past weekend. Didn't really realize that this storm was just like decimating this area. Not decimating, but it was a big storm. And I get a text from my neighbor. She goes, "Is this your kayak?" My kayak, not the boat I built, but my kayak was up in their yard. It's like, oh shit, I hope my boat didn't float away. I get home from the mountains, boat's gone.
Yeah,
damn it. So I was like, well, okay, one of two things. Either
pretty recognizable boat. Can't be too many places it went.
Well, it's a big-ish lake. So thought to myself, well, okay, either the boat will be found, and that's great, or the boat will have sunk, by definition, making it a shitty boat. I wouldn't have wanted it anyway. So that's kind of where my head was.
If it was already upside down, it's not really the boat's fault if it sinks.
Sure, fair play. But then I'm working out of work yesterday, 2 days ago. And I get a text from my next door neighbor. And it's a screenshot from our kind of area Facebook group. She goes, "Is this your boat?" My boat, on top of the dock, the inflatable dock, had drifted like a mile down the lake and was just like tucked up against some trees. It's like, awesome. Got the boat. So get home. It's me, my daughter. She's 4 years old. We get in the kayak, which we recovered from next door. Borrowed a paddle from.
I'm going to interrupt your story for a second to say it's just now that I've realized why you're excited about the transition at the end of this story.
Ready for this? Ready for this? Yes. So this is going to get great. We get in this kayak. I have 2 tow straps for my truck in the kayak. We kayak about a mile, hook it up to this inflatable dock, and I drag this fucking upside down boat on this inflatable dock like a mile back with a 4-year-old who's paddling with a stick, not helping. Took about an hour and a half, but the boat is recovered. It's still sitting on the inflatable dock, still covered in a tarp. I don't know if I'll ever sail this thing again because it's kind of beat up. But anyway,
it like survived a storm on its own. Like that's pretty good.
I know, it was actually pretty cool. Like even the rope that I had on top of the tarp was like still there. So it literally just like up and floated away. But I recovered it. Speaking of boats, here's the transition.
Drew is so excited about this transition.
Well, I connected the dots. As I realized this is the story I wanted to tell, then I realized the guest that we had this week is like, this is beautiful. So team, speaking of boats, Alex, why don't you tell us who we're talking to this week? Very familiar with boats.
Incredible transition. Commander Kevin Bernstein.
Sailed right through that one.
Our guest is Commander Kevin Bernstein. For people who like acronyms after their names, MD, MMS, CAQSM, FAAFP. I only know what one of those is.
That's the whole alphabet.
He's pretty close. He's got to catch them all. He's currently Director of Sports Performance and Performance Medicine for Navy Special Warfare Group 2 in Virginia Beach, Virginia. He is chairman of the Human Performance Subcommunity for Navy Medicine's Neuro-Musculoskeletal Readiness Community, and he is specialty leader for Navy Primary Care Sports Medicine. He is an associate professor of family medicine at Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences. For academic background, bachelor's in pre-medicine with a minor in biology and a minor in Jewish studies from Penn State, master of medical science and MD from Drexel University College of Medicine, and completed residency training at Naval Hospital Pensacola, where he served as chief resident, and fellowship training in sports medicine at Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton. At this point in his bio, I'm going to abbreviate things because he's done a lot of things, and there's only so much bio you guys want here at the beginning, but I'll hit some highlights. After residency, he reported to Fleet Surgical Team 7, forward deployed 24 months as a staff family physician on 5 patrols, augmenting medical support aboard 3 boats, as Drew would connect to the story. 3 large deck amphibious platforms. Again, we're going to cover some acronyms. I don't know. I assume these are cool boats. LHA 5, LHD 6, and LCC 19 in support of amphibious and expeditionary exercises in 7th Fleet. There's a bunch of other stuff in his bio that's all very cool, naval assignment stuff, medical things. There's just really one extremely unfortunate part of his bio, and that is that he served at Naval Health Clinic Annapolis, serving as team physician for 10 NCAA Division I teams, including, horrifically, Navy football. He was director for public health, chair of medical executive committee, and sports medicine faculty for 5 GME residency programs and USHU's medical students. But we will forgive him for the support he provided to Navy sports because he provides some pretty valuable insight into military sports medicine in our conversation this week.
And 2 things that I'm very excited about with this episode. Well, I guess 2 things that really stood out. Number 1, the Navy is a whole different world. I mean, we realized that almost immediately when we were talking to him and he started throwing out acronyms. We were like, I don't know what you are talking about. So there's that. 2, he brought us, or at least me, one step closer to one of my side quests, which is to get a submarine specialist on here. It's going to be a while because the person that he connected us with has a lot going on at the moment, but we think we may have found somebody that can speak to some dive medicine, some deep sea human performance type stuff. So anyway, excited about that. But before we transition into the episode, I do just want to do a quick plug. This came across my radar as we were recording an earlier episode. And because this gentleman was a strength and conditioning coach, it seems appropriate to at least shout this out on behalf of Sorinex. So for folks that knew him, I did not know Nick Vettel, but for folks that did know Nick Vettel, he was killed in a automobile accident on the way to Summer Strong, which for folks that know what Summer Strong is, it's Sorinex's kind of big symposium conference lifting event. They are selling T-shirts on behalf of Nick's, not on behalf of, I guess, to memorialize Nick, to raise money for his daughter's 529 college fund. So there is going to be a link. I'll send it to Alex so he can put it in the show notes. You can go to Sorinex's website. You can buy their memorial T-shirt. It's $30. All of those proceeds will go to his daughter's college fund, which is pretty sick. The strength and conditioning community is relatively large, but the tactical version of that is quite small. For guys that knew Nick, I'm sure he was an awesome dude, and we wanted to make sure that we shouted that out. So that will be in the show notes. If you guys got some spare cash, throw it towards the shirt. And Alex, unless you have anything else.
I'll just say I know that several friends of the pod knew him and have mentioned this to us. So if you're out there listening,
happy to do it. Enjoy the conversation. Can you explain, this is a broad question, but because I'm kind of coming into this blind, will you just explain the role of embedded sports medicine in the Navy at large? And then you can kind of dive down whatever rabbit holes within that you'd like to. That's a huge question to start with, but
it's a huge question, but I guess you're asking the right person.
Good.
We've started in about the mid 90s. We had one of our first sports medicine graduates back in the day when places like UCSD, Fort Belvoir, USIS, they were starting the whole sports medicine fellowship thing. And that's exactly about the time when we realized that we needed more subspecialty trained sports medicine physicians, specifically at your recruiting commands, specifically at the training schools and the accession sites. And then, of course, places like the Naval Academy, OCS, where you saw a majority of like your entry level musculoskeletal injuries. So what they did was they strategically started placing sports medicine physicians in these specific areas, like Great Lakes, where you have your enlisted recruit, like OCS in Newport, OCS for Marine Corps training, Pensacola, where you have your flight school, and other various at like MCRDs. And they started seeing the value of this and developed the SMART clinics, or the sports medicine and rehabilitation reconditioning teams, mostly in the Marine Corps at that point. And they basically spread those SMART clinics around those various specific spots, mostly in the Marine Corps, but also at fleet concentrated areas like Norfolk, Mayport, San Diego, and expanded from there to mostly Marine Corps at that point. Now we're getting into like the 2000s to late 2000s. The war started, it's underway. And then they started looking at what can we do to expand into the forward capabilities, because we were seeing that there were a lot of musculoskeletal injuries and TBIs and concussions that were being sustained in the forward environment. And what we did know at that point was back in probably the late 2000s was that just for TBIs and for musculoskeletal injuries, they were seeing about 27% and 14% of musculoskeletal injuries and TBI, respectively, had an average of about 90 to 120 lost days, duty days for both those conditions, which is pretty significant, especially in the forward setting, right? Of those, what we were seeing is the medevac and CAQSM was that 27 and 14% for MSK and TBI. So the SG, the Surgeon General, was tasked by the line commands to develop something to take care of this, because the depth of our bench was just significantly deteriorating. So the specialty leader, one of the predecessors of the position I'm in, Scott Pine, who was at the academy, what he did was he developed something called the Concussion and Restoration Care Center. They put that at Camp Leatherneck in Helmand province in Afghanistan. And what they found was, after they implemented that, and it was made up of a primary care sports medicine physician, physical therapist, occupational therapist, 2 to 3 nurses, 3 to 5 hospital corpsmen or medics. And then they augmented it at time to up to 2 primary care clinicians, like a physician, a primary care doc, or a PA or a nurse practitioner. And after that, they developed that, the CRCC. What they found was they decreased the Medivac CAQSM to 2.1% for musculoskeletal injuries and 2.7% for TBI. And that's a decrease again from 27 and 14% for those conditions. And they were also getting people back with a return to duty rate of over 97% within 10 to 12 days. And that's decreasing from 90 to 120 days just with those skill types. So we were finding in the forward setting that just putting those skill types together in the deployed setting for those conditions, we were getting people back onto the playing field to play. I like to use sports analogies in these scenarios. But they saw about 5,000 military personnel between August 2010, May 2013, and those were the return to duty rates, which were very significant. And that's the war setting, and now we're back, and now. So then we also eventually developed the SMIP program in the Marine Corps, the Sports Medicine Injury Prevention Program. Then that's your embedded athletic trainer model. So the initial...
And in that model, those athletic trainers are overseen by a sports medicine physician. Is that correct?
So that is the best practice. Now, we had a time where we were deploying a lot of sports docs because they didn't have panels, which a lot of primary care docs had panels. So it was easier to deploy sports medicine. And because of musculoskeletal injuries, we were sending a rotation of sports docs forward. So that is the best practice for that capability. But it's not always the case, depending on how much we have in the capability to cover down those billets, in other words. So
So
it's the OpNav instruction, MCO instruction 6400.2 is the SMIP instruction. And that basically says that the sports medicine physician is the preferred physician supervisor for athletic trainers.
So I'm curious, and this is kind of taking a step back from Drew's question,
Yeah.
like slightly bigger picture. I've worked in different human performance settings. Drew's worked in different human performance settings. I've worked with athletic trainers, physical therapists, occupational therapists, dietitians, PAs, MDs. I've never actually worked directly with a sports med physician.
Mm-hmm.
I've known a couple that I've talked to about Army issues. Since you've spent time at USU, you probably know Fran O'Connor and Chad Holsopple. Those are the ones
Sure
I
do.
talked to about all this stuff.
Yep.
But like, what is the unique role of a sports med MD as compared to those other
what would you say you
we've
do
worked
here?
What do you do here? Yeah. Using the office space model, right? I feel like I'm talking to the Bobs, right? So sports medicine physicians, most of us are family medicine residency trained. So we've done the medical school thing, we've done the residency thing, and in the military, most of us, we don't, especially in the Navy, we don't typically go straight from residency to fellowship. Most of us do like a 2 to 3 year utilization tour as a primary care doc, really like honing in on our primary care skill set. So you're talking about like every organ system from the primary care standpoint. That's our bread and butter. Then we do a year fellowship in sports medicine where we really focus on musculoskeletal injuries, concussion, altitude, you name it. We cover it from a athletic standpoint. I liken it to, we are the occupational medicine specialty for athletes. So if you think about it, like for wrestlers, we need to know all the skin things that could prohibit them from competition. For other types of injuries, we need to know the return to play protocols for post-operative, for specific injury patterns. And for a team physician, we need to be able to take care of the regular bread and butter primary care things. So, you know, when I was taking care of Navy athletics during my time at the academy, the orthopedist didn't really want to see the runny noses, the upset stomachs. So we took care of the primary care things, and we took care of all the multi-system things that could go into the overall functioning and performance of an athlete. So, for example, I took care of cross-country track and field during one of my years at the academy. You think about things like relative energy deficiency in sport, female athlete triad, and how those kind of interrelate with multiple organ systems. We get the training on how to identify those things, look at things from a sports psychology standpoint. So it really is whole body treatment of the athlete is what we get focused in on. And we have additional skill sets in diagnostic ultrasound and some other procedural things that we get during fellowship training. We are also taught how to work with athletic trainers. So every single week,
what are those?
I covered football games with my high school athletic trainer. And during the week, whenever they had something that would come up, they would call me and ask for, you know, what should we do? Could you come see them? So I had a really good relationship and understanding of what athletic trainers could do. And we understood each other's skill sets so that we could optimally be able to manage the occupation of the athlete. I also covered collegiate sports. So having the athletic trainers there, we also had the student trainers. So we knew exactly what training the student athletic trainers were going through during their collegiate years and their master's degree, because they're all master's level certified.
So first off, for the audience, like background context, we have talked to Kevin about the whole athletic trainer thing. That's kind of the subtext of this episode to a certain degree.
Wait,
but
what? No,
I have before we like give up on this, like understanding sports med physicians and their role in the military, I do want to understand a little bit, because I've never been the one in the room to make these calls, but I've heard of the debates around the issue of like, how do you decide which professionals you get on the interdisciplinary team? Because different branches have different professionals on their teams.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see physicians in embedded roles that often yet in the military. You guys seem to have convinced the Navy that it's important enough that, like, despite the high cost of training and like the demand for them in hospital settings and things like that, that sports med physicians are justified in embedded roles. How do you sell that to senior decision makers? And like, why do you think it's worked in the Navy when it hasn't in other places?
I really think it is being able to put together all of the systems that we learn throughout our medical training, being able to integrate every single skill type's inputs to holistically, and I keep using the word holistic purposefully. I know it's the buzzword, but we are so trained in the biochemical reactions and immunology and how they play a role in endocrine and metabolic capacities that we can integrate what the occupational therapist is telling us, what the dietitian is telling us, what the athletic trainer is telling us, what the strength and conditioning coach is telling us to figure out what the root cause is for a lot of these things, and also set up the athlete, the warfighter, up for success in not just rehabilitation of an injury, but for maximum performance, making sure that every organ in their body is functioning optimally. And because we have that baseline, holistic, comprehensive understanding of all organ systems, just based on our primary care training, having a primary care sports medicine doc to be able to be the key integrator of the entire human performance model is pretty critical when you're looking at it. And when you're looking at evaluation of laboratory results, radiology results, and how they can play a role with each other as well, having that medical school training and that residency and that fellowship training, it's pretty critical to be able to maximize the entire human performance team.
I want to ask you some specific questions about the Navy, because we've had Navy folks on before, but I think you're in a unique position and can probably answer these. Let's start with boats. Okay. What does human performance look like on boats? How does that work?
I'm really glad you asked that.
Thank you.
So my first duty assignment after family medicine residency training was with the Fleet Surgical Team 7 out of Okinawa, Japan.
I thought you just said after failing residency training, and I had to check myself. Okay, family residency training, first assignment. I just want to clear that up in case anyone else heard. After I failed residency
training, yeah. So my first assignment was in Okinawa, Japan. We deployed with the 31st MU on the large deck amphibs and the amphibious ready group. So it was large deck amphib and 2 smaller deck amphibs, and we would go out with the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit out of Okinawa.
Before we go too far down this,
I was about to pause you. Amphibious.
Yeah. We don't speak boat, and I got MU, I got amphib. I don't really have a frame of reference for like large, medium, small. Like how many people are on these boats?
We are landlubbers.
So figure 2,000 to 3,000, yeah. So ships complement about 1,000 or so. Then the rest will be Marines that are embarked on a large deck, and then a fraction of that on the smaller deck. I don't have the exact numbers on me, but the smaller deck will have less. So you'll have typically 3 ships, the large deck and 2 smaller ships, and then you'll have the Marines on there. They'll bring landing craft, they bring aircraft, and the newer amphibs don't have a well deck, but they're bringing them back. Bring back the well deck. #, bring back the well deck.
What's a well deck?
It's where you take Marines and put them on landing craft, and they go out the back of the ship.
Okay.
So that's the well deck. Yeah.
Bring it back,
so
baby.
Fills with water, and you send Marines ashore.
Okay.
So, and when you're underway and you're not doing anything, Marines, when they get bored, they do interesting things for another
like
time.
Get injured or
like get injured, do McMap, the martial arts that they do. So yeah, we would take care of dislocated elbows and shoulders and things like that when we were underway. But a lot of musculoskeletal injuries, as you can imagine. I wanted to do sports medicine fellowship, so I was very into musculoskeletal injuries, but I also had a specific interest in lifestyle medicine and lifestyle and performance medicine. So I created a performance medicine optimization program. And as part of that, I had all hands sessions for nutrition, for supplements, for sleep, for stress, and it was pretty well attended. It's hard to get everybody in one spot on the ship and ship medical places, but it was programmed that was available to all hands, and we put it on the weekly or daily calendar when they were occurring. I also put out advertising for one-on-one sessions with me, where I would sit down with a sailor or Marine and sit down for about 30 to 60 minutes and go through all lifestyle pillars, basically. We would talk about stress, sleep, how they played a role into their body composition, to their performance. We would talk about how to eat successfully when on a ship and you might have a replenishment at sea with new food for who knows what the intervals were. But we figured it out. We created what we call performance plates based on what was available on the ship, and then how to hit their protein targets. So I was able to do that with all the fitness enhancement program sailors. So FAAFP is what we would call when they fail their body composition or they're in danger of, they're put into that program. And within 8 weeks of doing this program, I saw about 3 or 4 dozen of the ship's company, and I got 90% of them in body composition standards within 6 to 8 weeks. Working alongside the command fitness leaders, the CFLs is what we call them, and alongside the Fit Boss, which is a strength and conditioning coach. So I work with the Fit Boss, I work with the chaplain, I work with the resilience counselor, and people would come in and be like, was there a nutritionist here? And they thought I was the nutritionist, but I was just someone that happened to be a physician that really had an interest in lifestyle medicine. And that was what we did underway. There aren't a lot of physicians that take an interest in these types of things, so or have the time or capabilities to do that. On the amphibious deck ships, we have multiple physicians that are embarked. So it's a little bit easier for someone like me to do a half day of sick call and consultations, and then do a half day of lifestyle nutrition coaching, basically, is what I was doing. So there are programs like that exist. They have had dietitian pilots that would go out to ships and do some nutrition programming. They had mental health, resiliency, clinical social workers that would go on the ships and provide those roles and capacities. We've had physical therapists on aircraft carriers for decades, and they have significant return on investments. So we love our physical therapists that are on aircraft carriers. And we are trying to get embedded physical therapists on the large deck amphibious ships, where you have most of the Marines that are embarked that injure themselves, as well as the sailors. So we're making inroads in that. We also are setting up a pilot site in Hawaii with the Medical Readiness Division, where we have one of the former specialty leaders is there doing a surface warfare optimization program at the Medical Readiness Division for the small ships over there, working with a physical therapist. So we have that initiative going on right now. And then we just got to cross the finish line. We have a sports medicine physician, a physical therapist, a psychologist, chaplain, safety officer, exercise physiologist at Training Wing in Pensacola, Training Wing 6, which is one of our aviation human performance optimization program startup sites. They're PCSing in August, and we're really looking forward to building that program. As you can imagine, pilots have always been told that they are athletes, but we haven't really had a human performance team set up at, say, the wing level, which is exactly what we're trying to build throughout of all naval aviation. And it's one of the premier things we're trying to set up over the next few years that we're hoping that we get across the palm finish line.
So we will get there. Don't worry. That'll be a decent chunk of this episode. This episode is happening kind of in part because in a previous podcast episode, I mistakenly assumed that naval aviators had human performance resources, and they just don't.
Yeah, they came at us pretty aggressively.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. Thanks for the correction. So we're hashing it out a little bit here. But before we dive into that, you did mention you were embedded as a sports medicine physician on those amphibious ships. Physical therapists were not. Dietitians were not. My superficial understanding, having never been anywhere near Navy stuff, is that anytime you add a position to a boat, you presumably have to take one away, right? There's limited berthing, there's limited food, there's limited whatever. It's a very you know the number of bodies you can put in the ship, and if you're adding some kind of nice to have, quote unquote, but medical support stuff, you're taking away somebody operational. You're taking away somebody that does the mission. How do you handle those trade-offs? I don't know if I have a better way to word that question, but
who gets cut?
Yeah.
It's a tough decision because the number one primary reason for a large deck amphibious ship is, let's be honest, it's combat casualty receiving. That's their purpose. It's to receive injured Marines that went to ashore, and the entire ship forward from the medical space is all overflow medical ship capabilities. Another thing, let's be honest about, is that the Comfort and the Mercy are not combat casualty care receiving ships in a casualty environment, because they don't have like the onboarding capabilities that a large deck amphib has. So a large deck amphib has much higher capacity for receiving casualties. So that's the number one priority. So if you think about the number one priority, who you want on board that ship, you want trauma surgeon, you want a comprehensive intensivist that's going to be able to run a critical care intensive care unit, right? So you want these skill types as your number one priority. When you're not in a wartime and you're doing exercises, what are the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that are limiting capabilities? Musculoskeletal injuries, mental health, right? So we know that at any one period of time on limb-due status in the Navy, that you have an entire large deck amphib with an embarked MEU that are on limb-due. So at all times right now, we are down one large deck amphib with the embarked Marines on people with just limb-due for musculoskeletal and mental health. So that's like the biggest question is, if the number one priority is combat casualty receiving intensive care surgical capabilities, but your top 2 to 5 diagnoses that are causing issues in lethality underway are musculoskeletal and TBI, how do you balance that? On a surgical team, how many people can you bring with you, right? Like you said, there's limited capacity. When I was on one of my or two of my patrols, the Fibron staff, which is the amphibious element, Commodore, and their boss brought their staff. So surgical team, we got put in overflow, Marine Corps overflow berthing forward underneath the gym. We were 4 high. So I've experienced the almost like the enlisted overflow life because we were riders. We were fleet surgical team. We weren't ships company. So I understand personally that there are limited spaces on board these ships for people. So
I think we got at something there that we'll probably set aside because it would take up a whole podcast episode or multiple podcast episodes. And it's something I think the DoD in general is dealing with, is that, like, essentially, I'm going to oversimplify for a second and just say embedded human performance is a peacetime thing. Trauma capabilities are the wartime thing. And I think part of the conversation is like making sure we can articulate how human performance team members would contribute in trauma situations, because I think that's that multi-role stuff that helps justify both like readiness in the prepared to do combat situation and readiness in the actual combat situation. But like I said, we're just going to shelve that one because that's like a rabbit hole we're unprepared to go down here, and we need to talk about Navy human performance before
Absolutely.
we yeah.
And just real quick on that, that's where something like the CRCC comes into play, dropping that team wherever you need it to do that prolonged rehab, but for another time.
Can I ask, this is another dumb, not Navy person question, but is the intent, like when sailors go out to sea, and then come back, I mean, are there metrics that you guys are tracking? Is the intent that they are bigger, faster, stronger, fitter? Do we expect a certain drop off in health because of like limited nutrition, et cetera, et cetera? Like, what does that framework look like? Or does the Navy even look at that, if that makes any sense?
So it's a loaded question, right? For for good reason. So we need sailors that are fully prepared, ready to handle each specific job rate that they are tasked to do. Whether you're at the engine room, whether you're in navigation on the bridge, whether you're a damage controlman, whatever the case may be, on the flight deck, you need to do your job. And if you can't do your job, then it's place on limb-due, find someone else, or continue to persist on. And when you get back from deployment, hopefully we'll be able to put you back together again, right? That's kind of the realistic thing. I don't like to sugarcoat it. So we're always functioning at an undermanned capacity, right? I mean, 80% to 90%, usually 80% is considered 100% in most cases. Mm-hmm. So we have for a long time performed undermanned in a lot of the platforms. And you'll see in a lot of the investigations that are coming out, if we were 100% staffed, we'd probably have better sleep underway. We'd have better cognition underway. And, you look at mitigation of mishaps that have occurred, and look, the reports are all public. It's all have been, well, is this a sleep and stress mitigation problem that we're having, right? We know that when you're underway, your circadian rhythms get messed up. We know that you're in sustained operations. If you have sleep deprivation, your hormone cascade is messed up. So suppressed testosterone, suppressed androgens, your metabolic capabilities are off. So these all have effects on multiple metabolic and endocrine pathways, right? So when a lot of this is cognitive, but some of it is physical, but how do you optimize that, right? When the PRT, our physical fitness assessment, is the same for every single sailor, yet I need someone who can think a lot when they're in combat control, ready to fire at targets, right? Looking at radars, etc. Versus I need a bosun's mate who's strong and their back is stable, that can haul and pull and push heavy things around the ship, right? So we can get into Pandora's box of rate-specific physical fitness requirements, right? We could go there, but how do we optimize each sailor and the job that they do on a ship? Well, it sort of is going in that direction, right? It's coming up with rate-specific physical and cognitive requirements in order to optimize the human weapon system and prolong the service life of that human weapon system. To put all the buzzwords out there on the table, right?
That was actually beautiful. I know we're going to transition to aviation, but before we go into the sky, I want to go under the sea with you here.
Yeah.
Team, this episode of Mops and Moes is brought to you by Train Heroic. Train Heroic is a reliable, well-designed platform for programming, tracking, and communicating with athletes. If you've been with us for any length of time, you will know that Train Heroic is the platform that we use to power our own training, long and strong, which you can find at our website, mopsandmoes.com. If you're looking for a solid platform to support your own coaching, whether it's your full-time role or a side hustle, Train Heroic is definitely worth checking out. You can use the link in any of our show notes, you can find it in our newsletter, or you can head to our website, mopsandmoes.com/training to get your first week for free. Little Mermaid style. Submarines. Now, I have seen, and Alex and I tried to track down the ghost of this guy who had allegedly done some human performance on a submarine. There was like a LinkedIn post, whatever. But is that, I'm trying not to throw out too many under the sea puns, but like, what does that even look like? And we don't have to go too deep, but damn it, I did it. Damn it. That was unintentional.
You're out dad joking.
Take us
today,
there.
man.
20,000 leagues down there. Take us there.
So when you're talking about like deep sea Navy, a lot of that is dive medicine, undersea medicine, UMO, DMO. They have human performance programming, and there are quite a few different specialties that feed into UMO, DMO land. A lot of your submarines usually have an IDC or an advanced medic on there. So an independent duty corpsman is going to be your senior ranking person on a lot of submarines. So depending on what your capabilities are, sometimes you bring a physician on board, but usually there's no physician on board. So when you're under the sea, underway, obviously space is tight, and you replenish what you can, but there's a lot that goes into undersea medicine, and I'm definitely not the subject matter expert on it, but what I could tell you is that they have likely significant different patterns when it comes to things like vitamin D, when it comes to muscle body composition, when it comes to the ability to maintain or build muscle, but a lot of it's going to be cognitive based, right? So how do you keep people where their circadian rhythm can be who knows where, in the right space when they have limited crew members that they have to be on certain duration shift work, right? So that becomes a very, very significant issue when you're talking about how do I optimize the cognitive domain, especially in something as high risk as being that far under surface, with all the medical things that can go wrong alongside it. So long answer short, yes, there are human performance elements that I think could be improved on across every community, and the dive and undersea medicine community, I feel like they have a pretty good grasp on the occupational requirements for the submariner. But is it something that we could take a closer look at from like the cognitive optimization piece? I think so.
That makes me like claustrophobic just thinking about it. Let's
yeah.
move on to something different. I'm like, oh God, that sounds horrible.
I'm a surface guy, which means I like being above it. I don't like being below it. If I'm on or below the surface, that's a bad day for me.
It's probably true for most people.
So I don't have a string of puns for the next pivot.
Let's take off, Alex.
Yeah, here we go. Drew's our designated dad joke guy here.
Yes, I'm the pun controlman.
But we exchanged some emails before putting this conversation together, and I looked a little bit at your pitch deck kind of thing on the Training Wing 6 naval aviation prototype here. And before I let you talk about what that prototype is, I don't even know if this is a question as much as like me venting about the state of military human performance.
Yeah, let's go.
It feels weird to me. Like POTFF is over a decade old. The Air Force has been doing air crew human performance for years now. Like we have pretty solid demonstrations that this stuff works. We have pretty good data on the injuries that are pretty unique to pilots, the back stuff, the neck stuff. Like we know what resources can help with those things. Why are we still trying to convince people to get this above the cut line in a future POM year? Like why do naval aviators not, like, I don't know. Like every population deserves care. I think human performance resources should be available to everybody in a perfect world, but the amount of money that the Navy sinks into training a pilot to then not provide them any of these resources when we know there's a high prevalence of specific injuries and specific issues that can ground people. Like, why are people like you still having to sell this so hard when the evidence is there?
That's a loaded question without getting me in too much trouble for, things you want to say, right?
Yeah.
Like, why are we not there yet, right? I think what it comes down to is there's a lot of risk mitigation strategies that have been put into place. And let's be honest, like the aerospace medicine guidelines for a lot of the things are very, very risk averse. So when you're talking about creatine, something simple, right? When you're talking about sleep circadian rhythm techniques, when you're talking about specific things that can affect the cognition of a pilot or a backseater, a weapon system person, it takes forever and a day because of the risk associated with that occupation. So that's kind of at the forefront. Then there's the cultural aspect too, in that the ability to, and I'll be here's my bias. I'm married to a naval flight officer, so like I have lived with someone who very likely, and I'm not going to violate any HIPAA, but very likely put off maybe some injuries or certain concerns because of fear of being grounded and not being able to fly, right? And that's a common thing from a cultural standpoint. So seeking medical is kind of stigmatized in the community from what we see. So that's also in the background of all of this. That being said, why can't we put a POTFF type of model into aviation, and why is it taking this long to have these conversations, or why it? Let's also, another elephant in the room, like with how hard that our human performance community works on products to sell, to put into implementation. I know, and you talk about Nazareth syndrome, I know that if I were to put on another polo shirt with a brand and sell it to a contract or something that I can do this human performance optimization for your crew with very good benefit, and I know it'll work because we already know it'll work. It's easier to buy and terminate contracts than it is to palm for and implement human performance in uniform. And it's also in the shiny shirt or, the professional whatever that's being sold. So there's those factors at play as well. And there are very good companies out there that, let's also be honest, some of them probably got out and were very frustrated that they couldn't implement human performance with those communities, are now selling it to those communities, and they're getting those contracts. And I'm glad that at least there is something in place. It may not be the best thing. It may not be the most comprehensive, but at least there's something being put into place in certain areas, right? So I think it's been taking a little bit too long to implement these things, but I think we have the right pieces in place at the top levels in the naval aviation community right now, where it's favorable to finally get these things palmed for and stand up a thing like what Admiral Brophy and Training Wing 6 in Pensacola are trying to accomplish, and getting these pieces together. And it won't be all of the team. It's going to be sports medicine, PT, like I said, psychology, chaplain, exercise physiology, safety, all playing together. But we want to have a dietitian there. We want to have strength and conditioning coaches there. Athletic trainer, maybe some, clinical cognitive specialists, like a PODIF model in aviation. And the aviators will tell you, like, they're told that they're athletes, and we want to set up an athletic training room type of environment for them with an entire human performance team in place.
So before we continue, I should apologize to the audience and then pause and define some terms. We used the term POM, both Kevin and myself, several times there as a
I
verb.
thought about that halfway through. I was like, I don't know if people know what that is.
Yeah. So just to back up for a second, and we will definitely not go deep on this one. Some people listening know all about it, and that makes sense. And some people know nothing about it, and they're probably happier people. POM, Program Objective Memorandum, 5-year budgetary process that the DoD does. That's probably enough said on that one for this particular setting. We're not going into acquisitions, timelines. Yeah. If you want to learn about POMs and FIDEPs and stuff, I guess be a field grade or something. I don't know what
but join the military.
It's miserable. It's not a good time. I don't recommend. But on that note, we talked about the challenges there. Let's get a little more optimistic. You're doing some cool stuff. I don't know how realized this is or whether it's approved or not. Tell me about this Training Wing 6 prototype.
Yeah. So the Commodore there, and he'll tell you straight up the same thing I've been told my entire career. I'm an athlete, but I don't feel like I've been treated like one. And that's something that's been at the forefront of a lot of our presentations, a lot of the briefs that we've done to various audiences, including the USNAC, or U.S. Navy Aviation Conference, is their big conference they have for naval aviation in Pensacola. In that they were willing to give up gapped funded billets, line billets, to put sports medicine, physical therapy, safety officer, and they already palmed for the clinical psychologist. So that was already palmed for because of all the mental health stuff. They were willing to put us in there to prove that this is a good thing, and they didn't want to wait for the palm process. They didn't want to wait 3 to 5 years to get these billets. And they had billets that they knew were gapped and they weren't going to be filled within the next 3 to 5 years, probably 3 years. So they were willing to put our people in those spots. And what they're doing is they're doing a HP setup where they're going to have sports medicine, physical therapy, and the multiple skill types at the wing level. So they'll be overseeing all the training squadrons from an HP standpoint. And what they'll be doing is starting with the instructors to try to get them functioning better, because they've gone their entire careers without this setup, but also the students coming in to baseline a lot of their things, go through educational pieces from a lifestyle performance medicine aspect with your sports medicine physician, but also provide that immediate embedded musculoskeletal injury and concussion / TBI / let's be honest, when you're pulling G's and rotational forces and hard landings and things like that, that has a cognitive effect. Being able to come in with early intervention for those specific things, because we know how much it costs to train each of those pilots. So when you're at the entry level point at the training wing, that's a great spot to begin those interventions. Very similar to our initial sports medicine rollout, where we started entry level training at both Navy and Marine Corps locations, MCRDs. We're trying to implement very similar things, but from a cognitive and physical performance standpoint. What they'll also be doing is they'll be doing executive leadership rounds where they'll be going to the triads of all the training wing and squadron and trying to optimize those instructors and the commanders so that they can make good decisions, because they've went their entire career without these capabilities. So really having that embedded piece in there to help not only the students, but also the instructors and the leadership is going to provide a significant boost to the Naval Aviation Training Command.
For a program like that, what are the return on investment metrics that the Navy looks to capture?
So for sure, it's the voice of the customer. Like, hey, normally I wait 60 days to see a physical therapist for my back. I saw them in a day. Like, that's cool, right? So you have the voice of the customer, and then you have the immediate access. We know a lot of the metrics when you look at limited duty, when you look at inability to deploy. It's how quick am I able to get early intervention and the appropriate skill set to take care of that thing. So not only voice of the customer, but compare to how long does it take to see an orthopedic specialist? How long does it take to see a psychologist at the military treatment facility or in the community if they don't have the capacity? How long did it take for me to get imaging? So sports medicine, we could do diagnostic ultrasound. Like, I can diagnose most tendon injuries or nerve injuries with a Butterfly IQ3 portable ultrasound, going from training room to training room or away games or from hangar to hangar. So that immediate imaging diagnosis versus how long would you wait for an MRI, and then how long are you waiting after that MRI to get in to be seen by the specialist to eventually do an intervention if you need one or don't need one. So you're preventing unnecessary MRI imaging. So that's a potential metric. Is that load freeing up more capabilities or MRI access for everyone else that actually needs the MRI in the community? So how do those access to care metrics look? And then from the training pipeline standpoint, how many people have fallen out of training prior to implementation versus how many people have fell out of training after implementation? So from an entry level point, that's a great metric. And we have very good metrics for the Marine side showing that once we put embedded athletic trainers at MCRDs, that a significant less number of folks ended up in the rehabilitation units there. So those are the types of metrics we'd be looking at. And those are the types of things that, the Commodore and the commander over there would be very interested in, especially if they're investing a lot of money just bringing someone to school. Mm-hmm. Never mind at each specific points they could potentially fall out.
So this is kind of out of left field, but as I asked you about return on investment metrics, it came to mind, especially when we were talking about, like, as much of the Navy as exists on ships and dealing with, what cuts are you going to make? Personnel is tight. And on the Army side of the house, we're experiencing a situation where embedded human performance programs have shown a massive return on investment. But what we are up against is a world where leadership often asks the question, instead of just contracting this out, hiring civilians, bringing in subject matter experts, can we not just have soldiers double tap and do this same thing? So I guess my question for you is, with the naval mindset, is there a risk of, hey, instead of bringing in an outside expert, could we not save bodies because it's such a limited number and just send these folks off to a course and like add an SQI? I don't know what the naval equivalent of that would be, but hopefully the question I'm getting at makes sense. Like, is there a risk of just downsizing these things despite positive return on investment metrics to save personnel?
There's always a risk of doing that. We look in the community where you try to replace one skill type with another. Physicians with nurse practitioners, PAs, athletic trainers, PTs with techs, medics, whatever the case may be. What's the fall off in whatever metric you're trying to look at? What I always defer to is the baseline level of training and what I'm getting when I see that. So I know for every physical therapist now that comes out of school that they have a doctorate physical therapy. They did 4 years of training, and most have done some type of university setting from that standpoint. So I know their baseline training. I know the baseline training of an athletic trainer, strength conditioning coach for the most part. So when I start with the baseline and how quick you can get to that skill type, I can get a tech that goes directly from their initial training, gets utilized for a little bit, then becomes that specific PT tech or ortho tech or whatever skill set, psych tech, mental health. They have the enlisted ranks for those. Pretty fast, right? So, for the most part, some have collegiate college degrees, bachelor's degrees. Most don't, right? So it's a lot of on-the-job training, and that's not to say long-winded. Like I have worked with incredible physical therapy techs. I've worked with incredible ortho techs. Some even worked with us with the Navy football team, and did incredible work at like a student trainer level. But they were phenomenal to work with. To say that one skill type is replaceable and interchangeable, I don't think that adds up necessarily. Mm-hmm. Especially when it comes to dealing with the athlete as when you're looking at athletes as the occupational medicine capability, as the athlete as the occupational health role. I think having the skill sets that were tailored for that specific population is going to give you the most return on investment by far. So I think all members of the team are really, really valuable. I don't believe that they're necessarily interchangeable, specifically in the human performance hub setting. That being said, we've seen significant returns on investment with just 2 or 3 of those skill types, like the CRCC in the deployed setting, where it was physician, PTOT, and a couple of techs, right? So I think it's situational, honestly. Mm-hmm. Where you see most of your musculoskeletal injuries, it's at the entry level recruiting and schooled infantry, right? In the deployed setting, you're seeing a lot of folks that need to get back onto the playing field as soon as possible. What are those skill types? So I really think it comes down to what's the highest rate of occupational injuries in that specific setting, and how can I get early intervention with the right skill set in that setting to get them on the right treatment plan as soon as possible. So I think it is situational. I don't think that they're all replaceable in every scenario.
So real quick, couple sidebars. One, I don't know if anybody from Champ listens to this podcast, but you guys have done some work on like occupational blueprinting kind of stuff. And I think a product that provided like a logic flow kind of model of like, if your unit has a high rate of this is the kind of professional you need. If your unit has a high rate of this is the kind of professional you need. I think products like that, and then some applying the community-based blueprinting model to organizations rather than just career fields. If we could do those 2 things, I think we take several steps forward in the military human performance space. That's its own sidebar. I don't want to like.
I was going to say, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. There's 3 people anywhere who know what I'm talking about when I say community-based blueprinting, but
it's population health at its finest. Mm-hmm. It is bread and butter, primary care, sports medicine. And who is your director of Champ?
Check. Fair enough.
Right?
Sports med. Yeah, it's fair. I mean, let's go. I'm here to help.
Specifically trained in population health, population-based data, and when it comes to being able to optimize whole health to broad populations.
Yeah, those seem like products that would be very valuable to people at the service level. Just saying.
Facts.
One other thing, because Drew mentioned SQIs, skill identifiers, things like that. I have been critical of various parts of the military for handing out skill identifiers with too low a requirement threshold before you like say somebody's qualified to be an expert and do the thing. So I did want to shout out, and you provided me lots of nice references before we got on this podcast, but you provided me the one for the Human Performance Specialist Additional Qualification Designator. And I'll read these off before Kevin gets to talk about it for a second. Prerequisites. It looks like you have to be an officer, probably a medical officer of some kind. I don't know if that's explicitly stated or just implied from the way it's written, but the written requirements are obtain a certified strength and conditioning specialist or equivalent credential, complete 25 hours of one-on-one mentorship with another human performance professional, complete a minimum of 12 months in a human performance program with SOCOM, NEC, USMC, or similar, or complete a Navy operational fitness and fueling system operational facilitator course, complete 3 consecutive cycles of excellent, low, or better in all 3 parts of the PRT. So there is a fitness requirement for you individually to achieve this. And then complete a performance improvement project in the field of human performance with your local command, community, or service. So that's a pretty high bar to get. I don't know how many people have this. I'll let you talk about it because you're the point of contact on this thing. But yeah.
I'm going to give Commander Mark Riebel a shout out as he definitely worked this to get this into the Navy AQD, Additional Qualifier Designator guide manual across the finish line. Worked with Navy Medicine BUMED, worked with PERS, Navy Personnel Command, and he got it put in. And I was there cheerleading him as I was still the chair of human performance for the Navy Medicine Operational Clinical Communities. And this was one of our projects that we wanted to get across the finish line because it does identify folks that have this specific skill set. And it has been incredibly valuable in identifying folks that we could send to places like SOF, to places like doing the aviation human performance startup, which we, no kidding, looked at our roster of people who had the AQD and we said, these are the ones that we are going to make sure are implementing this specific project first because we want it done right with the right skill set. So like I said earlier, like, you know what the baseline level of every physical therapist, every sports medicine physician, just based on their curriculum requirements and board certifications. But what is the level of human performance expertise necessary to be able to create this programming and get it done right? So with that being said, Mark mostly and I came up with these criteria to base it off of. We know that a lot of people can't escape the military treatment facilities, or they enjoy being there to do some operational experience that were outlined on there. So we wanted to make sure that if you went to the NOFs, which is short for the Naval, for the fueling, and it's basically an Exos equivalent. Exos based it off of NOFs. So I want to give out a shout out to Tunde Ridley and the CNIC folks for an extremely incredible product. But that level course is significant, and they do an incredible job putting that together. And they have NOF centers at all the fitness facilities now. So really good work for their team. And then obviously having that PIQI project just to show that if you are in a human performance role, that you can do human performance programming to create and make a difference or an impact. So we wanted to make sure that we had people that knew how to do that in order to get this qualification. So we have about I want to say a half dozen to 10 sports metaphysicians with HPAQD. We have probably a little over a dozen physical therapists. We have a lot of exercise physiologists because their background in exercise physiology, kinesiology, in undergraduate and graduate level training qualify them for most of that strength and conditioning background. And they do a lot of QI, PI, especially your aviation exercise physiology. So big kudos to them. They have probably, I want to say 20 or so AQDs that are HP. So they have a good amount of baseline folks that can start this HP program. I mean, they're a very excited group that want to do good things as well. Some PAs, I want to say 2 to 4 PAs have the HPAQD. Most of them are ortho relevant, but they've done some pretty cool stuff. And then what other skill type? I want to say, I think there was a dietitian that's trying to get one. So multiple skill types across various disciplines. And I think it's a good way, again, to figure out when you're detailing and when you're trying to find people to start up these new initiatives, how do we get them in the right places and to identify them and to tell the line that we have people that are no kidding ready to do this for you.
So I'm watching the clock. We're running out of time here. I have a bunch of other things that I wanted to get to that we're not quite going to get to. So I'm going to do two of the higher priority ones rapid fire style. We didn't get a chance to talk about the mobile MSK unit concept or the human performance center concept. Can you briefly define what's going on with those?
Yep.
Just so people are aware.
So mobile MSK, so PT, sports medicine, maybe one or two more skill types. Basically, either it's the spoke. Go ship to ship, drop in, go outpost to outpost, go, unit to unit. And
is pierside the right term here? I saw some.
Let's go pierside. Yeah. So pierside, ship to ship, and be able to evaluate, treat, diagnose in the ship spaces with immediate return on investment. The sailor doesn't lose a half day trying to go to the clinic, and it's a half day. They're going to go and they'll get back, or if they leave at noon for their 1300 appointment, they're not coming back at the end of the day, right? So the return on investment is immediate. You have no delays in diagnosis, and the no-show rate's zero because I'm seeing them in their spaces. So when we piloted this in Mayport, going on the ships there, we had zero no-show rate. We had immediate diagnostics, and we had immediate return to workspace. So
these are not actually crew members. They're not part of the ship, but they arrive in the ship's space when it's at the pier.
They're the crew.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're actually on the ship. We go on the ship with these tools and equipment.
Okay.
So very similar capabilities, no matter where you want to put it. We can do that. So we have a lot of different prototypes out there too. More to follow on that.
Okay.
And then
Human Performance Center.
Yeah. So SOI East at Lejeune, they just had a soft opening of their Human Performance Center. And they'll have their actual opening in the next week and a half. I just got an invite to go. But they are putting mixed assets, SMIP, SMART, in a DHA-owned facility that they built at Camp Lejeune at the School of Infantry. And they're going to have the entire team in offices in the periphery with a gym in the middle for both rehab, reconditioning, transition back to full duty. And they'll have ultrasound on site. They'll have all of the capabilities to do interventional things, as well as have the athletic training room there on site. So they had, it's DHA funded. And that is the model that we are basing our Human Performance Center, if ever asked. And we have had a few inquiries from different sites on what's the recommended HP center look like. This is it. So it's all disciplines, interdisciplinary, under one roof, doing everything. A very professional sports medicine type of capability. Very excited about it.
Quick clarification questions on that. One, what was it before this new facility opened? Because I've been hearing about the good work being done by the Human Performance team at SOI East for a long time. Know a couple of them. And then second question, so I don't forget it, I've also seen news about Second Marine Logistics Group opening their Human Performance Center. Is that similar? Is that DHA connected, not connected? Because I think Colleen Cronin has talked to me a few times about it, the work she was doing before she left active duty. But
yeah, I'm not familiar with the one you were mentioning, but the prior, what they're in currently, and then they moved over. It was basically across the parking lot, I want to say, or across the street. I visited there while they were building it. And they've been in another building for a while, the athletic training room, where they have a sports medicine office. The athletic trainers working in there. I believe they had physical therapy and some other, but they didn't have enough space to accommodate the entire HP team. They didn't have enough space to give you all of the barbell equipment, the racks, where you want to have all of the capabilities in there so that we're not just going from resistance bands to dumbbells. We're doing a whole robust transition to real strength and conditioning. So if you looked on a couple of LinkedIn profiles. There's some videos that I reposted from the group that's building it, that was contracted to build it. You could see all the new fancy equipment in there. It's phenomenal. It's a great project. And I am hopeful that DHA creates more centers like this from the same exact blueprint.
Awesome. So one final rapid fire question. We're already over on time, then Drew will close us out.
Alex does this. He steals.
I don't want to get you. I don't want to get you in trouble here. So we'll like go as far or not far as we can. I know we have to get PAO approval and stuff, but some branches in the DoD have struggled to navigate bureaucratic requirements surrounding the employment of athletic trainers. Navy seems to have been able to figure it out just fine. What would you say that Navy has done that has made that easier for them when it's become a problem elsewhere? And we're not going to pit anybody against each other. We're not going to like tell other branches what to do, but in that hypothetical scenario.
So Navy has privileging authority, and they have been able to utilize privileging authority at different command levels. So like Naval Aviation Forces, CNAF, Fleet Forces. There are a certain other operational commands that have privileging authority. They've maintained that control, and from the Marine Corps side, they also have that privileging authority. So even if DHA isn't privileging, or if there are other branches that are not privileging, Navy was able to maintain their privileging authority. And we have instructions saying what the best practice is, so that there are state variances, the best practice is to have physician supervision, and the best gold standard of care practice is to have a sports medicine physician as the physician supervisor for athletic trainers. So even you look at other master's level skill types like physician assistants, they also have state by state differences in how their physician supervision, or lack thereof in some states, may not have consistency. What if we adhere to the highest standard and the standard of practice and the specialty that was specifically trained to learn and know how to work alongside athletic trainers? That's really the key to all of this, is to have the right skill set working alongside and creating the check boxes needed for physician supervision if that state requires it. If you just maintain that level of supervision and that standard of practice, then we've been able to maintain that, especially in the Marine Corps.
Okay. This is another one kind of out of left field, but I'm curious about it because human performance, I would imagine in the naval special operations space, it's been around for a while and it makes sense. Ground pounding, kicking doors, doing all the tactical stuff. But I think what's interesting about the naval soft space is that career field is so different from a sailor or an aviator. It seems like the distance between those two career types is much broader than what we see in the military, in the Army side, where the soft world is kind of similar to the infantry in some ways. And I'm curious if the soft human performance lessons learned in the Navy, which of those have kind of trickled into the larger fleet, so to speak, if that's the appropriate word?
So I think the POTIF model, specifically funding the right skill sets to maintain the human performance product line, has been significant when it comes to how or what should be replicated fleet-wide to get the right skill sets, the right skill types together in one spot to take care of each sailor, right? So I think replicating that is a significant step forward, especially if we're able to get that, let's say, in naval aviation standardized, right? Mm-hmm. Especially if we're able to expand that Marine Corps side to include not only athletic trainers, PT, sports medicine, but OT, dietitians, like standardize that at every human performance center that's on a Marine Corps base, right? Similar to SOI East. So I think there are lots of lessons learned, but also taking note that there are certain communities like, that may utilize certain craft, certain tools, certain capabilities that may need more cognitive. They may have more subconcussive things. They may have more physical things and specific distributions. So they may need more reliance on your cognitive specialists, in other words. So I think, as we were talking about before, like, what are the right skill types to be in the specific spots? I think there are a lot of good lessons learned on what are the right pieces. And then we need to figure out from a population what specific right pieces need to be in that specific population in a specific area. If we have that targeted approach, I think that's how you like crack that profile, that limited duty problem that you're having across the branches.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm excited about your answer to this one because it's a classic Mops and Mo's closer. And what's interesting is I think you do actually, in some sense, have the keys to the kingdom here. But regardless, I think you know what's coming. If tomorrow the Navy just sort of handed you an unlimited budget and you had a week or so to just make this look like whatever you wanted it to look like, what would that look like?
So for one, I would definitely expand human performance centers to every fleet concentrated area. I would have them at every entry level, and I would make sure that SOI West, as well as some of the Marine Corps concentrated areas, had the hub. And then I would want the spoke. I would want that deployment ready capability to take care of sailors and Marines and all services in the forward environment that are easily adaptable and ready to be dropped anywhere to provide that CRCC, that Restoration Care Center model in a deployed setting. Knowing what the skill types were, using lessons learned in the past to make sure that we have those skill types ready to go, trained up, and working together, right? I think it's easy to, be in a clinic by yourself without those skill types around you. I think optimally, all those skill types are working together, not only in the deployed setting, but also at home, which is where that HP model setup is so critical, because having that interdisciplinary team constantly working with each other, we all know, like, I know for sure, like, I have blind spots. I'm not an expert of everything. I have a primary care background, and I know that I don't know the depth of every single organ system to my capability. I don't know exactly what a dietitian knows in their breadth and depth of learning. I don't know exactly what an OT or PT or cognitive specialist knows in their depth of learning. But I know that all of our minds are better together, and I know that we can all integrate all this information together. So I think by all of us playing together in the sandbox, playing well together, and being able to bounce things off of each other, we're all better together than our individual parts. So my best case scenario is, let's get everyone working together under one roof, very close by, so that we can bounce those things off of each other. And I will say, one of the key things that I learned during my residency training, I was in a smaller command in Pensacola, they closed that residency, was that I was able to go to the dermatologist, the GI, all of the specialties were so close together because of a smaller community hospital. I could bounce things off of everyone very quickly. Mm-hmm. Versus in certain medical centers, or if you don't have all the capabilities that adjacent or close by, that brain power isn't as powerful if they're all spread out so far apart, or segregated or siloed. So I think if we're able to amplify our brain power as close as it's embedded units, right? Embedding things into units, but also making sure those medical specialists are also playing together very close by to each other. I think that's really the key to all of these things. So that would be, if I had all the money and all the star power for a day, that's how I would integrate everything, so that when we're ready to deploy, we're already familiar with how we work together.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we will have more to discuss in the future. I don't know whether that means more collaboration with Navy stuff, more podcast episodes, who knows, but there was a wealth of information here, a lot of topics we didn't get to. So I do want to thank you for coming on, and I will, in light of all you have brought us, forgive you for being a Navy football fan. It is okay. We'll allow it this one time.
Well, let's be fair. The 2 years I covered, they lost to Army, and then I leave. And not only do they win the Commander-in-Chief award, they go and beat Oklahoma in a bowl game. So I was obviously the common person involved with the losses.
You were the problem.
I was the problem. So I'm the problem. It's me.
Well, we're only a few weeks out from next season, so we'll see how it goes.
That's right.
Team, welcome back to... No, not welcome back. Team, welcome to the after show.
They've been here.
I don't know how much of this you're going to keep. Maybe all of it. I might sound like an idiot. Team, welcome to the after show. We just finished up our chat with Kevin talking about naval sports medicine in general. But I think more broadly, just, is it safe to say the entire ecosystem of naval human performance?
Yeah, covered just about all of it.
Yeah, and it's one of those conversations for me where, like, I know we use the word rabbit hole a lot, but we've sort of laid out the map, so to speak, and now there's all these different rabbit holes, I guess.
Mm-hmm. There were a few that we would have loved to go down. There just was not time for.
Yeah, there's not time. So I will let people in on the fact that I did manage to nail down what I think might be a submarine human performance rep after recording. So hopefully that's something we can line up. But I think in terms of takeaways, we played it safe, relatively close to the chest, talking about the the athletic trainer situation. But
I walked the line. I got into some dangerous territory, but I think I needed to draw that out. It was important.
I just think that the Navy has, like, are they smarter than the Army? Is that going to get me in trouble?
I don't know.
Do they just approach problems better?
I'll offer a productive takeaway on my end, some homework for us. I'm going to speak this into existence because we were discussing it a little bit in the doc we use to coordinate as we figure out what rabbit holes we are and are not going to go down.
Mm-hmm.
But I think something Mops and Moes could do to help from, like, an external community building kind of way for the human performance world and the DoD. And I'll throw this back. Several months ago, I put out a chart of, like, which professions are employed by human performance programs in which branches. I don't think it was quite perfect, but it did seem to be helpful for a lot of people to even know what other programs exist out there, what they do, what they don't do, how they compare. And so I think Drew mentioned the idea in our doc as we were talking about it of just having a section on the website where we can, like, have pictures of different military human performance centers. And I think that's, like, vaguely interesting and somebody might find that useful. But I think a way we could upgrade it is,
That's a good
and
idea.
I'm just going to speak this out to the audience. If you are a part of a military human performance program and you would like to have a little just, like, highlight section, like saying, like, this is what your program does, this is where you are, this is who's on your team, and if they want to reach out, how they could reach out and find you.
A directory.
I think something like, essentially a directory of military human performance programs to help with collaboration across branches. Because whether or not the Navy is smarter than the Army, and as a pretty loyal Army guy, I'm going to say, obviously they're not. They're fat and they're dumb and all of the above.
They figured out athletic trainers.
But they did. They have cracked the code on some problems that we have not cracked the code on. So I think that's an example of something that the directory could potentially help with, is like, hey, I've run into this problem. I wonder if anybody else has solved it somewhere else in the DoD and could show us how. Obviously these have to go back and, like, get approvals. Like, it's not a secret that solves your problem instantly. And I'm sure a lot of the people working these problems at a high level already know all this stuff. But enough times I have run into conversations where people don't even have an awareness of what already exists out there within the DoD, that something like that might be helpful.
You know, as you say that, we've talked a lot now for a number of years about why doesn't the DoD just have a human performance cell? What if we just start doing that?
Check.
So then maybe that's what we'll start doing. No, we'll just start doing it.
No, that's what I'm saying. We can do a lot in our unofficial capacities. I agree.
Well, yeah. So, gym pictures or directories, all of the above. But to kind of bring this back to Kevin and maybe put a bow on it, I think certainly a large percentage of our audience is Army, which, makes sense. That's kind of the genesis of this podcast. But it is pretty cool to see and hear how the Navy is solving for some of these problems, specifically the shipboard. Shipboard, is that the word?
It's the word.
I mean, I'm sitting here listening to him talk. Starboard, port, pier side. And I know we were in the doc, we were talking back and forth, like, just a whole nother series of acronyms and phrases and all the things. So it was cool to kind of dip our toe. There's another unintentional pun into that water, so to speak, with the Navy. But certainly more to follow, especially with the submarine stuff. I'm pumped about that.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, we will see you guys next week. Hey, Alex, let's cover our ass real quick.
Oh, great idea, Drew. All right, guys. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode. Before you go, please rate and review the pod on the listening platform of your choice. You can also visit us on our website at www.mopsinmos.com. That's mops, the letter N, mos.com. You can check out the library of podcast episodes, our latest blog entries, any helpful resources, and also sign up for our newsletter.
Drew nailed it. Just to underline a couple of things, the podcast entries have in-depth show notes on the website. So if you missed anything or you want to read any of the research we talk about, it is all there. You can, at the bottom of the website, sign up with your email and receive future updates from us. The blog posts go a little bit more in depth in kind of written form on a couple of topics we get questions about all the time. But most importantly, I just want to ask all you guys, our best way the word gets out is absolutely word of mouth. So tell your friends, tell the people you work with, anybody you think would find it useful. Thanks for spreading the word.
If you have any questions or comments, feel free to shoot us an email at either Drew or Alex at mopsinmos.com.
Or there's a contact form on the website.
Thank you.